Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Good evening. Let's edify one another this evening, shall we? Even though my daughter has not yet tagging done. I think she got called away, but I don't know. You are? She's working on it. CJ, did you finally get your internet? He's working on it. Hello, Sam. Good morning. Uh, you know, we got hit by that stupid food poisoning on Sunday afternoon, and I think O'Shea's has translated into something else because he's still going through some pretty gnarly stuff. But for most everybody else, they're pretty well out of it. Me, on the other hand, because of, I mean, I've gone out of it, but because of the diabetic medicine I'm on, that is also for weight loss, which slows down my digestive system, I end up feeling the effects to a lesser degree over a longer period. I'm miserable. I'm sure you guys wanted to know that, so there you go. We had an early out today for the school bus route, so I actually spent all day, all morning down at the school. Interesting. I'm not sure if that's ice or caulking. Um, anyway, spent all morning down at the school, just in case they might need me because we were having freezing rain come in, and there were schools that were letting out already. Basically, shortly after we got kids to the school building, there were area schools that were starting to cancel. Schools that were dismissing 1 to 2 hours early, or dismissing at noon, and so I went and started to. I left school to go run an errand in town and then go home, and I'm on the phone, calling to make an appointment for the doctor for Amy, and I'm like, there's snowflakes and freezing rain is already hitting my windshield. This is not good. So I get to Dollar General, and I call my boss. I'm like, it's already freezing rain here, and there's snow blowing in the town here. Just figure you might want to know in case you guys want to. He's like, yeah, I'm already getting ready to call supervisor or our superintendent. Okay, well, I'm just gonna turn around and head back. I'll stick around close. So that's what I did all day. We already had an early out scheduled for today anyway. We were dismissing 2 hours early anyhow, and that's what we ended up dismissing at as it was. But I got to help the boss and with some things, and we had got chatted and had a good conversation. He's not very busy, or rather, he's busy about a lot of things, but not a whole lot of things gets done. But then again, it might have been just the day because it's such an early day. We changed a tire, and he delivered a Suburban over to the elementary for the crazy route that we were going to have to do. Then went in and washed dishes because they're needing help at the school for kitchen. They don't have anybody to help in the kitchen. Looking for cooks, and then he finally showed up back over just about the time that drivers were starting to gather, which is about 12:30, getting getting ready to start buses and what have you. Hello, O'Shea. So CJ, are you back? Ding. Do you finally get internet? Good. Is it good internet? You think so? Donnie was wrapped in his blankets all day. Well, I'm actually sitting here because I'm not, as I said, I'm not feeling well. Um, but I'm actually here with my electric blanket going. Oh, I mean, I've got my thermal jammies on. I've got my long sleeve on, and house is nice and comfortable. You typically, I mean, we usually keep it about 72 in here, but for some reason, I'm just cold and bowel distressed. He tuned in to watch Diva this morning. You baited him into correcting Alicia's. Who's Alicia? Yeah, you said I have a certain other person that keeps asking if Alicia can do Bible for him. I don't know Alicia. I don't have an Alicia here around here. Well, eventually autocorrect will actually take over if you keep correcting it. It's called learning, and it does learn. Eventually, it's like kids. You have to work with it several, lots and lots and lots. Oh, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. This song here, um, when I first heard it, I heard it sung by Enya, and um, that's right, O'Shea. Anyway, um, I first heard it sung by Enya. I never knew that it was an actual gospel song, which now means I have to every time I hear Enya sing it, I have to actually skip it. because it's a gospel song. Listen to the words. Has to work out the difference between alive and alive live. If a song is a worship song in one place, it's a worship song in every place. It's why I will not listen to Amazing Grace when done with bagpipes, even though that's a beautiful, even though it's one that every time I hear it done on bagpipes, even the beginning notes of it, it grabs my heart. But if it's a worship song, if it's a hymn of praise and worship to God, it is in one connotation, it is a worship done in every connotation, because once it's attributed in my mind as worship, guess what I do? I sing it in worship. So every time I hear it, every time my mind is singing it, my heart is worshiping. So yes, I cannot, in all good conscience, hear it with instruments and not sing it. There is, what they call Christian rock. Um, I don't know. Um, if they're going to use it in worship to God, then they're doing it the wrong way. So they're not worshiping God in the manner that He prescribed. Therefore, uh, it's vain worship. If you're going to worship God, you must worship God in the way that God has prescribed to worship. Otherwise, you are dictating how you will worship God, and that's not the way that God operates. God says, "Keep my commandments." He doesn't say, "Okay, I'll let you worship me in whatever way you choose." What he does show through principle and through command, uh, like it says in Romans, the things that were written aforetime were written for what? For our learning. So we go back and we look, and when God told Adam to tend the garden and to not eat of a tree, yet Adam ate of that tree, God did what? He punished him. He kicked him out. When God when God accepted Abel's sacrifice but not Cain's, we know then that there was a particular way that God wanted to be worshipped. And Cain did not offer that. There, ergo, God had already specified how men were to sacrifice to him, because Abel learned from someone. He learned somehow. Men don't just simply up. Oh well, I'm gonna. Don't wake up one morning and say, "Okay, I'm gonna build an altar and sacrifice to God." So we then continue. Hello, Sister T. As we continue that vein of thought, um, we see then that when God allowed man his own devices, as in uh, when 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 God, basically, how do I want to put it? What we see is man perverting things and going his own way, doing things his own way. What we have happening is the perversion of the world that occurred that led to the flood. And then what we have is, after the flood, we have um, God saying, "Okay, I'm not going to destroy the world by the flood anymore." And we see that God prescribes certain measures or things that man has to do. He talks to Abraham. Abraham, you got to do this, this, and this. And he guides the patriarchs up until the time of Moses, at which time, then, after he leads Israel out of Egypt, he sets forth his covenant with Israel and says, "Here's my commandments." And we see his overall principles stated clearly. First and foremost, I am the Lord. You shall have no other gods before me. Well, if I'm dictating how I'm going to worship God, then what am I doing? Am I following what he wants, or am I making myself the standard? When he says, "You shall make no graven image," and you know, and I make a graven image and I bow down to it, I've broken two commandments. I've made a grave. I've broken the first one. I've put some other god in place of God, and I've made a graven image. And so there's the thing of it is that then you continue on down, and as you read in Leviticus, I think you're getting close to, if you haven't already talked about Nadab and Abihu. Um, God had prescribed a certain way that he wanted the priest to worship him, to offer sacrifice. And Nadab and Abihu went and they took their fire and they put incense in it, and they went to offer their incense before the Lord, but it wasn't the way that God had prescribed. And it says that they offered strange fire before the Lord, because they did what they wanted to. Now, it may or may not have been an honest mistake, but we do know it was not what God had wanted. They were not paying attention, or they did it. They did it um, willingly. Either way, they didn't do what God wanted them to. Hmm. Well, one of the things that we do know is that at funerals, as well as at weddings, um, wine would have been used. And one of the things we also do know is that wine is used as a downer, as a means of forgetting one's sorrow. Alcohol has always been used to try to drown one's sorrow. Um, so it is interesting. I probably wouldn't read too much into it, other than that. But suffice it to say, God does not want does not want his priests to be influenced by something other. Well, he doesn't want them to be influenced, or under the influence of something that would hinder their honest and um, pure worship. I think that is the lesson that we can learn from that particular command. Amen. Well, they definitely approached God in an incorrect manner, because they had the strange fire. Uh, O'Shea says not to mention that it makes it easier for people to lie and it clouds judgment, which are two very important things to God. Amen. When we're intoxicated, you lose your ability to think clearly. You lose your ability to function clearly and coherently, and you lose your restraints. Um, Having worked in the jobs that I have, and one job in particular as the guest service manager for and the night audit, in particular the night audit for a hotel, which means I was the guy that got there about 10 o'clock at night and I left at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, depending upon whether or not the next shift came in on time. That could be as late as 9 o'clock in the morning. Depends upon whether or not the first shift manager had a late night drinking or whatever. Anyhow, we won't go there. Um, but on Fridays, we had parties that would come in, wedding parties, you know, celebrations, and whatever. The people could book the hotel for celebrations, you name it. And there would, we had certain rooms, as in conference rooms that could be uh, converted out, and we would cater and what have you. Now, that meant that there would be alcohol on premises and there would be drunk people on the premises. And um, when I first started there, they weren't doing a whole lot of that. The hotel was kind of in the more rundown state, uh, but the restaurant was still operating, and so people would come in from other areas and would come sit in the dining room for kind of an after party. Um, they wouldn't be allowed to they wouldn't be allowed to drink alcohol, but they could sit there and we'd furnish, ice water and let them sit there and continue to talk and what have you as long as they wanted to. Well, that meant I got to deal with a lot of drunks. You see an amazing variety of people, from very argumentative, knock down, drag out, fight, ready to fight at the drop of a hat type of drunk, to the very comedic, everything's funny, cracking jokes, and just nothing is nothing is serious, and everything in between. Um, God says, "This is not what I want for someone, for a priest. When you come into my presence, you come into my presence sober. You come into my presence uh, in full charge, control of your faculties. Do not drink wine. Do not drink strong drink, and come into my tabernacle." And that's the principle. Now, what can we draw from that? Well, elders are not to drink, and multiple times throughout the New Testament, we are encouraged to be sober, to not be intoxicated. And that's the little word, not to have any toxic thing in us. Um, and to be watchful. You can't be watchful if you're inebriated. Ain't no way you're going to be watchful. You're not going to be able to see straight. Um, what was the other thing I was going to say? But the other thing is, that's an overriding principle. We are also priests. We are offering sacrifices. First Peter chapter 2 tells us we are priests. We're a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Romans 12:1 and 2 says that we are to offer sacrifices, ourselves as a sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice are we offering if we as a holy priesthood are intoxicated and the sacrifice itself is impure with toxicants? That's a question you got to ask yourself. So, but that's a principle there. Now, back on the topic of instrumental music, when actually on the topic of worship, when we dictate how we worship God, we say that um, basically we set ourselves up as higher than God because we're the ones that say, okay, I know that you are the creator and everything. You're supposed to be all powerful, but I'm going to do it this way and you're going to be satisfied with it. What kind of message does that send to God? God's never been that way. He's never operated that way, never allowed the creation to do that and get away with it and be satisfied. That doesn't work with God. You don't see that ever as working with God in the Old Testament. Well, and ask the children of Israel during the period of the judges, how often did he send them into slavery um, because of their refusing to give heed to his commandments? Judges tells us that every man did what was right in his own sight. Did God accept that? No, he didn't. When they did that, he then turned around and sent the nations around them against them and sold them into bondage unto those nations. Yeah, hey, I don't want the ark to fall, but he was not a Levite, and they were going against God's law when they were carrying the ark up by cart instead of by Levite, and he put his hand on it. There's a reason why those staves were on that ark. There was so no hand touched that ark except for the priests, the high priests. So no, you know, if it's a worship song, then there must be something sacred and holy about it. We have to keep it, because otherwise, what are we offering to God? We're offering something common and profane. It's common. If it's common and profane, it's not something you want to offer to God, is it? Mm. Yes, we're taking pleasure in them that are offering up a vain worship at the very least, and so we have to be very careful about that. Just Sister T says, "I will not listen to a song with Jesus or God in it if it's got instruments. It bothers me, just like that song, "The Long Back Train" by Randy Travis. I do not like that song." I was a part of a congregation that went and took that song and actually put it in their songbook so they could sing it, and I'm like, this is really not a worship song. And so I stopped. I refused to sing it. No, that's all right. But listen to these words of this song. My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the clear, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. The chorus says, no storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth, oh, how can I keep from singing? Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? And then the chorus. The peace of Christ makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am his. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth, oh, how can I keep from singing? Anya does a very masterful job of singing this. Very beautiful song. But then I heard our brother, is it Josh Acapeldridge? The our brother who's known by Acapeldridge. Uh, I heard him. Go ahead. There you go, Michael Eldridge. Thank you. Our brother Eldridge sing that song, and I'm like, huh? And so went looking. I've got it. It's in my song. It was written by a preacher, Robert W. Lowry. Now, of course, they use the title of Reverend on that. which I refuse to do. But anyway, um, so I know it was a denominational preacher, but it's still a beautiful song, and it actually speaks of how our life is meant to be a song. Our life is meant to be a sacrifice to God, and we offer the sacrifice of our lips, which is a song of praise. Our hearts sing, and what do they sing? What does it sing? Yeah, we're to make melody in our hearts, and so our hearts are how we make a song to the Lord. Right. Um, well, she is denominational and she is New Age as well, but I like Enya. I love Enya's music. It's very calming to me, and I've loved it ever since I heard Watermark, but um, otherwise known as Sail Away. Uh, but yeah, I found Enya in the early '90s, mid '90s, and I've really loved her music ever since. But suffice it to say, when I find music like this, I have to skip those particular songs. And here's the here's the song. My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the clear, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my Oops, let me do that again. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ was Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, how can I keep from singing? I really have got to work on my. It's playing in my head, and that's not really working for me so well. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, how can I keep from singing? Let me drop that a bit because that's bugging me. The peace of Christ, the peace of Christ makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am His. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, how can I keep from singing? I will get it one of these years. And you change the tune just a little bit. She's holding notes that aren't held in this one. I got to work on that one, but but so my version, the song that I hear Enya singing is a bit different than the song that I hear. The tune is the melody is a bit different than the one I hear Brother Eldridge singing, and boy, it plays havoc on my sight reading. Thy life flows on in endless song above us lamentation. I hear the clear though far off hymn. How can I keep from singing? Excuse me. That tales a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. Oh, how can I keep from singing? There we go. That's better. Through all the no, through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? The peace of Christ. I wanted to hold that one. The peace of Christ makes fresh my heart, a fountain heaven springing. All things are mine since I am his. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since Christ is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? What book and chapter is it that talks about if you love me, keep my commandments? John 14:15, Sister T. John 14 and verse 15. If you love me, keep my commandments. And you can run that all the way down through verse 23, I believe it is. Maybe 24. And also John 15 verse 14 says, you are my friends if you keep my commandments. Yeah, you can go there. If you love me, keep my commandments. I will pray the Father, he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, even with whom the world cannot receive, because he dwelleth, or because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. But ye know him, for he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. I will not leave you comfortless, I will come to you. Yet a little while, and the world seeth me no more. But ye shall see me, but ye see me, because uh, I live, ye shall live also. That's really lovely, Alicia. I can't hardly see that other last word there. At that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. He that hath my commandments, and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him, and will manifest myself to him. Judas saith unto him, not Iscariot, Lord, how, uh, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself unto us, and not unto the world? Jesus answered and said unto him, If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. He that loveth me not keepeth not my sayings, and the word which ye hear is not mine, but the Father's which sent me. Now, by this we know that what Jesus was saying was God's commands, God's word. And so if we keep God's commandments, if we keep Jesus' commandments, we're keeping God's commandments. And that word keepeth means that if we obey his commandments, okay, if we obey his commandments, if we live his commandments, if we do his commandments, then Christ abides in us. And that in and of itself means that we don't get to dictate to God how we keep his commandments, because love says not, um, love says not which one. Love says, yes, sir. Do you need anything else? We often forget that pure love, which is the caring concern for the well being of another, pure love is not about self interest. If I love God, it's not about my interest, it's about him. Just like if I love you, it's not about my interest, it's about you. Love is not an emotion. We got to get over this. Does it involve emotion? Absolutely. But is it emotion? No. You see, love is the caring concern for the well being of another. It's a choice. I choose to employ my concern for your well being. It's not about my self interest. Rather, it's about your well being. So when it says, if you love me, Jesus says, if you care for me at all, if you care for my well being, do what I say. Think of it this way: God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him should not perish but have everlasting life. What did Jesus do? Because of love. He lived a sinless life, suffered persecution, suffered at the hands of a merciless crowd, merciless soldiers being whipped and flogged and having a crown of thorns beaten unto his head, laughed, spit upon, mocked. I should say laughed at, mocked, spit upon. A purple robe put upon his bleeding back, blindfolded, saying, prophesy which one of us hit you, as he's being hit. Then having that same robe drenched in blood ripped off his back, reopening those wounds. Led through the streets, at the first carrying his own cross, then having to have somebody else carry it for him. Which point he was then hoisted, having nails driven through his hands and feet. If that's not concern for your well-being, for my well-being, what is? And you want to tell me that you're going to tell him how you're going to love him back by telling him what you're going to do, what commands you're going to obey, and which ones you're not? Jesus doesn't say, if you love me, tell me which ones you're willing to obey and which ones you're not. No, no. Hebrews chapter 5, verses 8 and 9 tells us that he, because of his obedience, because of the things that he suffered, became the author of eternal salvation. So whatever he wrote is what's necessary for eternal salvation. Whatever he commanded is necessary for eternal salvation. You don't get to pick and choose. If you want eternal salvation, you must obey it all. I must obey it all. He, because of his sacrifice, has the right to tell us what is necessary. We have no right to say, I will do this or I will, and I won't do that. And we have no right to expect eternal life if we do. We have no right to expect eternal life if we try to tell Christ what we will and will not obey. Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Guess what? There's no negotiation allowed there. Nope. The Catholic was not the first church in the Bible. You cannot find the word Catholic anywhere in the Bible. Challenge her to find it. And Jesus says, I will build my church. So it's the church that belongs to Christ. And if you want to get technical, Romans 16, verse 16, please, Alicia. Have her look up Romans 16, verse 16. How's that one for you, CJ? First Corinthians 1, 2. Listen. She can't find what? Romans 16:16? No, no, I'm talking to Teresa. Romans 16:16 or the word Catholic in the church in the Bible? Alicia, would you have Ezra come back here a minute? Or actually, O'Shea, would you have Ezra come back this way? Forgot that Ezra O'Shea is watching. Or at least he was before he got a phone call. Which he probably is on a phone call by now. Might be. But if Ezra shows up, we'll know that he isn't. I hear I am not coming from the kitchen. Oh, okay. Oh, he's probably outside. On your what? Oh. I'm wanting my big, huge book on the timeline. I can't remember. I mean, I think we brought it back home. Yeah. Well, we had it at one point in the church building, but I think we brought it back home. Okay. If so, I want to bring it back home. So do I, because it's a big fold out of the timeline of. I believe that the first division of the church, which resulted in Catholicism, occurred about 162 to 180. Don't quote me on that. AD. Love you too, dear. No, I can't push pause. Sam says there are men who claim to be of God who put other standards not found in the Bible. And did you know the Catholic is set up like a Roman government? Well, actually, Sam, it's because the Roman government was set up like the Catholics. Well, eventually came to be anyway. Um, because eventually the Catholics took over the Roman government, starting with Constantine. But what the some of the first changes of church that resulted in Catholicism was the um, was the consolidation of power under the bishops. Um, so what you had was uh, you had congregations. Every congregation had elders, and the elders were known as bishops, presbyters. They just had different names for them because that's what the Bible called them, different by different names: presbyters, elders, bishops. These were the names, and it just simply denoted different aspects of the same office. And what happened is that eventually, well, they didn't have enough men qualified in one congregation, so it consolidated down to one man. And so then they had um, several congregations that, okay, well, we don't have elders, but this congregation has elders, so oversee our congregation. And so we eventually have coming into a play bishops over diocese, or over an area, over several congregations. And then that eventually consolidated even further to where we had bishops over bishops, you know. Um, so you eventually come down to like the Bishop of Asia or the Bishop of Bithynia. Um, and uh, so then eventually, and these divisions are, these going away from the biblical pattern is what led to the eventual formation of the Catholic Church, because eventually you went from bishops to what's the next step above a bishop? Well, that's going to be cardinals. And what's the next thing above cardinals? The Pope. And so each time you had to have some way to justify these new offices, and they had to go back just like the Jews did. And believe me, the Jews did actually do this in the Talmud. Um, is what they would do. What the Talmud is a collection of uh, Jewish rabbis' writings. So they have the Pentateuch, and then they have all these other writings by rabbis. So they have the Pentateuch. They have the basically the writings of the prophets, and of course your history, and so you've got, like I said, the Talmud, the books of history, the books of poetry, and the books of prophecy. And then you have the book. Then you have all these writings and commentaries being formed together. Thank you, Oshaya. I had it. I know. Yeah, 606 was the Pope. Boniface That may be an official organization, but that I'm not talking about the and this is a good timeline. Um, yeah, that's a good timeline. But that was the official organization that was Pope Boniface III. There was actually, I think, obviously two other popes before him. It's just that they didn't gain as much traction. Um, but the divisions happened before that, and they were already starting to happen, obviously, because you had people saying, "I am of Paul, I am of Cephas," by the time Paul was writing to the Corinthians. Um, so the Jews did they go to their rabbis, and there's, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? And so their Talmud, their book of holy writings, is all about, well, I think this is what this means. I think this is what that means. And they find ways, and this is why Jesus says, "You by your traditions do nullify, the law." That's what Jesus was meaning when he was talking about that. When he talks about Corbin and all that. Um, well, the Catholic Church had to do that in regards to the New Testament in order to justify their existence. For they go back to Matthew 16 and say, well, Peter was the first pope because of Jesus' statements, "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock will I build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it." Matthew 16, verses 18 and following. The problem with that is that the Greek doesn't support their statement, because the word Peter, Petros, means pebble. And the word rock that Jesus used, Petra, means bedrock. So you have pebble versus a foundational stone. Jesus is not referring to Peter, but to something bigger than Peter. Secondly, according to their own Catholic tradition, Peter cannot be a pope because Peter was married, and popes cannot be married. Peter had a wife. His mother-in-law was sick. Jesus entered and healed his mother-in-law. I'm trying to remember the reference for that. CJ, you got that? Um, Slacker. Thirdly, additionally, Peter also had children who were members of the church, as we find out in uh, is it Second Peter? Or is it First Peter? Luke what? Alicia. In Luke 4:34. Okay, so hey, where are you going? I said 40. At least I think that's what he said. Is that what you said, CJ? He doesn't know what he said. 38 through 40. And he rose out of the synagogue and entered into Simon's house, and Simon's wife's mother was taken with great fever, and they besought him for her. And he stood over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her. And immediately she rose and arose and ministered unto them. So we're dealing with, Peter, Simon Peter's. Um, I think that was the only Simon in the apostles, wasn't it? Yeah. And Peter had a son, as we find in First Peter chapter 5, verse 13. First Peter 5:13. Someone's a little asleep is the word I was going to look for. Church is that is Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, as and so doth Marcus, my son. Mhm. Peter had a wife, a mother-in-law, and a son. And Peter's son was a member of the church at Babylon with Peter. Now, all that's to say that, he doesn't fit into the definition of their pope who cannot be married. However, the biggest stone in their uh, gear, uh, in their gear of thinking, there is the fact that Jesus was not referring to Peter, Petros, but rather to a foundation stone, Petra, which was the fact that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the confession that Peter made, which when Peter confessed Christ before the apostles, Christ in return confessed Peter before the apostles. Matthew 16:18. And this demonstrated the fact that it was the confession which was the foundation stone upon which Christ was going to build the rock, or build the church rather, and the gates of Hades was not going to prevail against it. And the church uh, has not been overrun. Hades has not prevailed against the church that Christ has built. Well, that's because she doesn't believe Jesus, Sister T. Jesus says my church. He doesn't say my church is. And if you are not going to believe Jesus when he says that, you don't believe Jesus. And no amount of change, no amount of persuading at this time is going to change your mind. So I can't. You're not going to persuade. You're not going to change your mind. So at this time, you're just going to have to let the seed sink, and pray that the Lord will water it. Something will be said some point in time that will cause it to grow. But it's Remember what we talked about with Luke 19. Um, was it Luke 19? No, remember what we talked about Monday. What will others think? Well, we have to make sure that we love Christ first. And there comes a point in time when we have to actually move on. Not that we ever stop loving them, not that we'd ever stop associating with them, but there comes a point in time when we have to move on because you're just beating your head against a stone wall. And you know your sister as well, better than most anybody else. You know how much of a stone wall that probably is. As much as I love my siblings, I know when to quit with them because I know just how stubborn they can be. And I'm sure that every single one of us has a stubborn sibling somewhere. Unless, of course, we're only children or only childs, which in my case, that's not it. So, and I do have a sibling that wishes he was an only child, but God blessed him that he wasn't, so he can get over that. But I can say that he hasn't in 50 some years, so I don't think he will. Oh, you're right, Sam. It is hard to move on. It hurts our heart, but there is none so blind as will not see, and that goes for us as much as it goes for them. Remember Christ when he sent out the disciples into the cities, said, "If they will not listen, dust your feet." That principle still stands. There are other people who are deserving of our time and of the gospel message. We do not need to continue to beat dead horses when there are other people who need to hear the gospel. Um, and God has told us that we are to preach to every person, not just our family. And that means sometimes we have to give up and leave them where they belong in God's hands. They have a choice. We have to respect that choice. You know, here's another one for you. Forced love is not love. Stop and think about that one. Forced love is not love. By the way, CJ, can you check YouTube? Make sure that we're over there. Normally we have at least one viewer, and I see that we have none. Um, Forced love is not love. God never wanted the children of Israel to love him out of because they were forced to, but out of a desire to. That's why he stood pleading. What? Ah, good. At least we're there. He stood pleading. He said, "Come back." Many is the time he sent the prophets to him, saying, come back, return ye to the old paths," as Jeremiah says. Not because he wanted to force them, but because he desired them to come back. Take a lesson from that. Forced love is not love. Whew. That one will get little Shay's nose crying. Um, so when the Inquisition occurred, and um, when people, the Catholics in particular, strove to force people to convert to Christianity, just as much as other religions have tried to force people into their belief system. They were wrong. They were absolutely dead set unchristian. We can argue all we want to about, and with valid reason, how they're not of the Bible anyhow, because Christ only built one church. But the point remains that to force someone to convert is not what God wants. He's never commanded it. He wants people to convert out of a desire to convert, out of a conviction of wrongdoing that begins in their heart, not at the end of a sword or gun. And to think otherwise is totally against Scripture. For without faith, it is impossible to please God. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. If I am forcing someone to convert, that person is not coming to God of his own volition. He has no faith. If I am forcing someone to come to God, to convert, he is not diligently seeking God because he does not believe that God rewards those who diligently seek him. He has no faith. He is simply converting because he fears what I will do to him, not because he desires to know God, because he desires to receive the reward of finding God. This person has no faith. Forced love is not love. Hopefully, prayerfully, you have been edified today through our time tonight. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you, CJ, for being on stream with me for a little bit and helping me through this. I have not felt well, but we have made it through an hour and a half amazingly. I was going to do a short stream. Ha! You're disappointing O'Shea. You're failing. You're flaking on him. Yeah, Nicodemus is in John chapter 3. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were asking where it was. Sorry. I apologize there, Sister T. Anyway, hopefully, prayerfully, you have been edified and to a greater, more faithful service with God. Remember, there's within our heart a melody. How can you keep from singing? Keep the peace of God, which passes all understanding, within your hearts. Let it guard your hearts. Philippians 4, verses 6 through 8. That way, whether we wake tomorrow to serve God here on this earth, we'll do it out of love. Not forced, but because we desire to love Him. Or whether we wake tomorrow to serve Him up there, where we all long to be, it'll be because we have loved Him and kept His commandments. And you know where I'll have the pleasure, the privilege, and the honor of being, for I'll see you all. I love you all. Have a blessed night.